President Trump sought to overturn the results of an election, and of a fair election. He sought a coup by misleading people with lies. President Trump is a failed leader. He will go down in history as the worst president ever.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's forceful condemnation of Donald Trump emerged in the wake of the 2020 U.S. presidential election and the January 6, 2021, Capitol insurrection, events that deeply shook American democracy. In his speech, Schwarzenegger, a former Republican governor of California, framed Trump as a failed leader who sought to overturn a free and fair election by propagating baseless claims of voter fraud. Actions he equated to orchestrating a coup. Drawing parallels to his personal history, particularly his father's Nazi sympathies and the dangers of propaganda, Schwarzenegger emphasized how lies, like those spread by Trump, corrode trust and destabilize societies. He argued that Trump's relentless efforts to delegitimize the election results, culminating in the violent attack on the Capitol, would cement his legacy as the worst president ever, a leader whose relevance would soon fade into obscurity, as irrelevant as an old tweet. This searing assessment of Trump's leadership naturally extended to those who supported him, as Schwarzenegger's critique broadened to encompass Republican lawmakers who enabled his falsehoods. Invoking Teddy Roosevelt's definition of patriotism as loyalty to country over leader and John F. Kennedy's profiles in courage, he shamed those lacking moral fortitude. He contrasted their spinelessness with the resilience of American democracy, which he likened to a sword tempered by fire and hammering, a metaphor borrowed from his Conan the Barbarian role. Just as steel grows stronger through repeated trials, he argued, democracy would emerge fortified from the trauma of January 6, provided reforms were enacted to prevent future crises and accountability was demanded for those who incited the insurrection. Yet, Schwarzenegger's vision went beyond criticism, shifting toward a hopeful call for unity that transcended partisan divides. Acknowledging global anxieties about America's democratic ideals, he urged citizens to support President-elect Biden's success, framing bipartisan cooperation as essential to healing and national renewal. By weaving personal anecdotes, historical references, and vivid metaphors, his speech transcended mere political criticism, offering a moral appeal to prioritize democracy over party and to reclaim America's role as a beacon of hope. Ultimately, Schwarzenegger's words underscored a belief that even in darkness, the nation's foundational ideals, when defended with courage and collective purpose, could still shine our lights once again.
You said history shouldn't repeat itself. Donald Trump is now the front runner to be the nominee of your party, of the Republican Party. Given everything you said, does that concern you?
Absolutely not, because being a front runner of one party and letting them dig this hole deeper and deeper is going to make it easy for the Democrats in the end to win. It's sad to see that they couldn't come up with a new talent, with a new face that is a reasonable, smart, intelligent person that can lead this country in a Republican way.
Years later, this theme of renewal resurfaced in Schwarzenegger's dismissal of concerns over Donald Trump's status as the 2024 Republican frontrunner, reflecting his broader critique of the GOP's strategic direction and leadership vacuum. In a recent interview, Schwarzenegger, a former Republican governor of California known for his moderate conservatism, argued that Trump's dominance within the party is a self-sabotaging misstep. Being a frontrunner of one party and letting them dig this hole deeper and deeper, he asserted, is going to make it easy for the Democrats to win. His remarks underscore a belief that the Republican Party's reliance on Trump, a figure mired in controversy and polarizing rhetoric, alienates moderate voters and undermines its electoral viability. This concern about the GOP's trajectory flowed seamlessly into his lament over the party's failure to cultivate new talent capable of uniting the country under a vision of reasonable, smart, intelligent governance. By clinging to Trump, he suggests, the party risks stagnation, forfeiting opportunities to appeal to a broader electorate increasingly weary of divisive politics. His reference to history shouldn't repeat itself hints at a desire to move past the turbulence of Trump's presidency and embrace leaders who prioritize pragmatic solutions over partisan theatrics. Despite his critiques, Schwarzenegger's pragmatic streak emerged as he addressed the current political landscape, framing President Biden as the lesser of two evils in a hypothetical Trump-Biden rematch. Though unenthusiastic about Biden, he acknowledged that many voters have grown disillusioned with Trump's leadership. This stance reflects his long-held emphasis on governance over ideology, forged during his tenure in California, where he navigated a Democratic-dominated legislature through bipartisan compromise. This focus on practical governance underpinned his broader call for Republican renewal, as he envisioned a party that champions traditional conservative values, competence, reason, and national unity, while distancing itself from the toxicity of Trumpism. By urging the GOP to come up with a new face, he advocates for a return to principles that could broaden its appeal in an evolving political landscape. His critique resonates with moderates within the party who fear that Trump's grip on the base will cement the GOP's image as out of touch with suburban voters, independents, and younger generations. Building on this forward-looking perspective, Schwarzenegger's remarks ultimately served as both a warning and a roadmap. By framing Trump's candidacy as a liability, he challenges Republicans to prioritize electability and forward-thinking leadership over loyalty to a figure whose divisiveness threatens the party's long-term relevance. His vision hinges on a simple yet urgent question. Will the GOP choose to dig deeper into the trenches of the past, or will it forge a path toward a more inclusive and resilient future?
President Trump, I just saw your press conference with President Putin, and it was embarrassing. I mean, you stood there like a little wet noodle, like a little fanboy. I mean, I was asking myself, when are you going to ask him for an autograph or for a selfie or something like that? I mean, you literally sold out at this press conference our intelligence community, our justice system, and worst of all, our country.
Shifting back to an earlier moment of Trump's presidency, Schwarzenegger's fiery condemnation of Donald Trump's 2018 press conference with Vladimir Putin captured a moment of profound national disillusionment. The event, held in Helsinki, saw Trump openly contradict the unanimous findings of U.S. intelligence agencies that Russia had interfered in the 2016 election, instead siding with Putin's denials. To Schwarzenegger, a Republican former governor of California and lifelong advocate for American strength, Trump's behavior was not just politically troubling, it was humiliating. "You stood there like a little wet noodle, like a little fanboy," he scoffed, lambasting Trump's deferential demeanor as a betrayal of presidential gravitas. The metaphor of a wet noodle crystallized his disdain for what he saw as Trump's weakness, a stark departure from the assertive leadership Schwarzenegger believes America deserves on the global stage. This visceral reaction flowed into a deeper defense of U.S. institutions, as Schwarzenegger argued that by dismissing the intelligence community's conclusions, Trump sold out the very agencies tasked with safeguarding democracy. This was more than a political misstep. It was a moral failure, undermining trust in the justice system and eroding America's credibility. Schwarzenegger's outrage echoed bipartisan concerns, aligning him with figures like the late Senator John McCain, who called the press conference disgraceful. His remarks transcended party lines, framing the issue as one of national dignity rather than partisan loyalty. The Helsinki incident also illuminated Schwarzenegger's personal ethos of leadership, shaped by his time governing California through pragmatic compromise. He values accountability and resolve, qualities he found glaringly absent in Trump's capitulation to Putin. The fanboy jab underscored his belief that a president should project strength, not sycophancy, especially toward a geopolitical adversary. This moment, for Schwarzenegger, symbolized a broader pattern of Trump prioritizing personal diplomacy over institutional integrity, a trend he viewed as dangerous to both national security and democratic norms. The global and domestic fallout from Helsinki further amplified Schwarzenegger's critique, as allies questioned America's reliability and adversaries seized on the perceived weakness. Domestically, the incident deepened divisions within the GOP, pitting Trump loyalists against traditional conservatives like Schwarzenegger, who argued that true patriotism demands loyalty to country over leader. This emphasis on principled leadership carried through to his ultimate call to action, as Schwarzenegger positioned himself as a dissenting voice within his party, urging a return to conservatism rooted in courage and accountability. By mocking Trump's submissiveness and condemning his disregard for U.S. institutions, he reminded Americans that leadership requires defending democracy, not diminishing it for the sake of political theater. In an era of deepening polarization, Schwarzenegger's message cut through the noise. Strength lies not in sycophancy, but in steadfast commitment to the ideals that define a nation.
You're the president of the United States, you shouldn't do that. I mean, what's the matter with you? I mean, whatever happened to the strong words or to the strength of Ronald Reagan when he stood there at the Berlin Wall and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. What happened to all that?
Looking beyond specific incidents, Schwarzenegger's sharp rebuke of Trump's broader diplomatic approach. You're the president of the United States. You shouldn't do that. Whatever happened to the strength of Ronald Reagan? Encapsulated a recurring frustration with what he perceived as a decline in presidential gravitas and moral clarity. The comparison to Reagan's iconic 1987 Berlin Wall speech, where the Republican icon boldly challenged Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down this wall, serves as a stark contrast to Trump's conciliatory posture toward adversarial leaders like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. For Schwarzenegger, a Republican former governor and admirer of Reagan's legacy, Trump's reluctance to assert American values on the global stage represented a betrayal of the presidency itself. This nostalgia for Reagan's leadership style transitioned into a broader reflection on America's identity, as Schwarzenegger championed the unapologetic resolve of the Cold War era. Reagan's Berlin Wall moment symbolized more than political theater. It embodied a commitment to democratic ideals and a willingness to confront authoritarianism head-on. Schwarzenegger, who immigrated to the U.S. from Austria and often champions American exceptionalism, views such resolve as foundational to the nation's identity. Trump's diplomacy, by contrast, prioritized personal rapport with autocrats over public accountability, whether downplaying Russian election interference or avoiding criticism of North Korea's human rights abuses. To Schwarzenegger, this signaled a dangerous erosion of the moral authority that once defined U.S. global leadership. The admonishment, "You're the president, you shouldn't do that," bridged into a critique of Trump's informal and undignified style, which Schwarzenegger found lacking compared to Reagan's strategic resolve. Where Reagan projected strength through rhetoric and action, Trump's approach, marked by incendiary tweets and transactional symmetry, struck Schwarzenegger as ineffective. His frustration extends beyond policy to the symbolism of leadership. A president, in his view, must embody the ideals of the nation, not diminish them through deference to adversaries. This contrast with Reagan also highlighted a growing rift within the Republican Party, as Schwarzenegger's invocation of traditional conservative values clashed with Trump's populist America First agenda. By appealing to those who value principled global stewardship, he underscored a broader identity crisis. Should the GOP prioritize pragmatic diplomacy with authoritarian regimes, or reclaim its role as a champion of democratic values? Schwarzenegger's answer is unequivocal. His critique is less about partisan loyalty than a plea for leaders to uphold the courage and clarity that once made America a beacon of moral leadership. In tying these threads together, Schwarzenegger's words resonated as a final warning against the perils of abandoning principle for expediency. In an era of rising authoritarianism and geopolitical uncertainty, he argues that America's strength lies not in transactional deals or sycophantic summits, but in unwavering commitment to the ideals Reagan so boldly defended. For Schwarzenegger, the presidency is not merely a title, it's a responsibility to project strength, defend democracy, and honor the legacy of leaders who understood that true power begins with principle. Arnold Schwarzenegger's thunderous clash with Donald Trump, a collision of muscle-bound conviction, Reagan-era ideals, and a chainsaw through the fog of political spin, leaves us standing at a crossroads. What lingers after this showdown of titans? Is it Trump, the would-be strongman, reduced to a wet noodle in Helsinki, his bluster dissolving like fog under the heat of truth? The unraveling of his Lincoln-esque delusions, a gilded tower of lies collapsing into the swamp of history. Or Schwarzenegger, the immigrant-turned-terminator of tyranny, his Conan's sword raised not against barbarians, but against the rot within his own party. Returning the mic to you, did Schwarzenegger's blend of Austrian grit and American idealism sharpen your resolve? Did his tales of Nazi shadows and tempered steel crystallize the stakes? That democracy isn't a gym trophy, but a barbell we all must lift. Maybe you've watched leaders in your own life morph from champions to charlatans, their promises as hollow as a podium without principles. Drop your reflections below. We're here to spar, sweat, and strategize. Smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to join our squad of democracy's gladiators. Your voice fuels our mission to bench press the lies, spotlight the silenced, and follow warriors like Schwarzenegger who refuse to let autocrats rewrite the playbook. Thank you for riding this rep with us. The fight for justice isn't a Hollywood montage, it's a grind. Stay tuned, stay jacked, and we'll see you in the next set.